All right, let's get cooking. Welcome to the latest edition of Chin Check Sports Radio. I'm your host, JD. Thank you all for taking the time out to join us. And as always, we welcome any suggestions, feedback, comments, and criticisms, which improves the quality of our program, which ultimately improves your listening experience. On this broadcast, I wanted to continue our top 10 fighters of all time. We're starting off with our honorable mentions list of the fighters who we enjoyed watching growing up, but for whatever reason they couldn't make the top 10, so we created a special category of our 5 honorable mention fighters in no particular order. But before we get started on that, of course, we are all dealing with the world pandemic of COVID-19, commonly referred to as the coronavirus. And I know right now this is an absolutely stressful time for everybody, with schools being closed and businesses being closed and changing hours. I know this is going to affect people's money. I know people are not having the same income coming in. I know the stress of trying to stockpile food supplies and water and toilet paper and hand sanitizers, things that are really daily necessities, and people are having a hard time trying to find these items. So I know that it is definitely stressful right now, and the world seems to be in one big chaos. So we at Chin Check Radio, we only hope that we can provide some type of leeway, mental, I would say a mental release from everything that we have going on, just to get some easy listening, because even the common thing that we used to use to escape the reality of the world and kind of, take a break from reality was our sports. And right now, all sports have been suspended and or canceled. So this is definitely a rough time right now. And I know you all are trying to hunker down with your families and take care and provide for your families. So while you're doing that, if you guys can take a little bit of time to listen to our program, we definitely appreciate it. And again, we're all in the same struggle. So my thoughts and prayers and hearts are with everybody listening to this broadcast, as well as everybody on the entire planet, because this is affecting everybody in some way, shape, or form. So on this broadcast, we definitely wanted to continue, as I mentioned before, listing our honorable mention top fighters of all time. Now, it's been a while since we've produced one of these programs because other things have happened in the world of professional sports. But if you remember, and please go back and check, we did our first program on Saul Canelo Alvarez. And we talked about his major fights, why he's already made our honorable mention list, and why he's out of the top 10. Now, in the case of Canelo, still being an active fighter, he still has potential to move into our top 10 list. Well, with the next fighter that we're going to preview and include in honorable mention, is part of the featherweight, at least in my lifetime, the featherweight golden age. And I'm talking about Juan Manuel Marquez. Folks, Juan Manuel Marquez was an absolute beast, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him fight. Marquez competed in the featherweight division, the super featherweight division, lightweight, light welterweight, and welterweight. His best weights were featherweight, super featherweight, and one can make an argument lightweight. Now, he has 64 total fights, 56 big wins, 40 wins by KO, 7 losses, and 1 draw. Now, the great Manny Pacquiao, who we feature later on in our program, if you want to talk about his biggest rival, not even Floyd Mayweather, Marquez was his biggest rival. And we're going to talk about their legendary wars as well as other great fights that Marquez has fought. So remember, this particular list, this honorable mention list, is in no particular order. So it is not ranking Marquez over Canelo Alvarez. This is just the order that I put the fighters out there. So I did mention at the end of the Canelo broadcast, the next fighter would be Mexican. I use the term a Mexican invasion. So obviously Marquez falls next into the list. So we're going to mention some real notable fights, and we're really going to break down some of his notable fights. So we're going to pick his career up in February of 2003 when he scored a TKO victory over Juan Manuel Medina. Now, I know a lot of fight fans don't know who Manuel Medina is, but I remember him because he once defeated the late, great Johnny Tapia in April of 2002. I thought Medina won that fight. He was robbed in that decision. Now, guys, go back and look at old Johnny Tapia fights by Vida Loco, My Crazy Life. At one point, Johnny Tapia was clinically dead. That was part of his career, or that was part of his bio. Great fighter. A lot of issues outside the ring. Definitely an exciting fighter. At that time, Tapia was on a comeback trail. He was a big-time HBO fighter. HBO loved his fighting style. He had a backflip he would do in the ring, and he was that true blood and guts warrior. But Manuel Medina, I thought, beat him in that fight, and pretty easily, and they gave the fight to Johnny Tapia. So in February of 2003, Marquez scored a TKO victory in the 7th round over Juan Manuel Medina. He defeated Derek Smoke Gaynor in November of 2003. Now, if you guys don't remember when Derek Smoke Gaynor, who was a good friend of Roy Jones. Now, him and the great Roy Jones Jr. I believe they were both from Pensacola, and he was, I don't say a protege of Roy Jones, but at the time when Roy Jones was at his peak, especially in 2003, of course, Roy was putting on a lot of his fighters and kind of giving like a lot of his guys exposure. So Derek Smoke Gaynor, through his association and friendship with Roy Jones, is why he was known to fight fans. And Marquez has a victory over him, a technical decision over him in the 7th round. Now, here's where Marquez's career picks up. In May of 2004, a draw with one Manny Pacquiao. Now, let me put it into perspective here. This Manny Pacquiao that he fought in 2004 was fresh off of his upset victory versus Marco Antonio Barrera. Now, Barrera was the king of the featherweights, already had beaten Hamed, already had beaten Morales, and Marquez decided to take a fight against a young up-and-coming Pacquiao, and Pacquiao just blitzkrieged Barrera. Absolutely blitzkrieged Barrera. So Marquez, another up-and-coming featherweight who was kind of seen as the unsung hero of the featherweights at that time, because remember, you had Marquez, you had a Barrera, you had an Eric Morales, you had a Prince Hamed. Now, these guys were the three. Now, Prince Naseem Hamed clearly ducked Marquez for a long time when Marquez was his number one contender for one of his sanctioned body belts, and he could not get that fight. Barrera and Morales always had business with one another ever since their first fight in 2000. Then you saw the rise of Manny Pacquiao through his victory over one Barrera. So you figure with Hamed being the big star, Barrera beating Hamed, the wars with Morales and Barrera, Marquez was seen as the other talented Mexican featherweight, but wasn't getting the exposure that these other guys were. So when Pacquiao beat Barrera, this set up the fight between him and Marquez for Marquez finally to get his chance to show how good he was. And ladies and gentlemen, that was one of the greatest fights I have ever seen. And folks, in the first round, Juan Manuel Marquez was beating Manny Pacquiao to the punch, was picking him off down the middle, and was totally counter-punching Manny Pacquiao. And with about a minute left in the round, Pacquiao lays him out with a straight left hand, scores the first knockdown, gets up, scores a second knockdown, and with about 30 seconds left in the first round of the fight, Juan Manuel Marquez was picking himself up off the canvas after his third knockdown in the first round. And you thought, for all intents and purposes, the fight was over and Pacquiao was going to knock this guy out. I'm talking about nose bleeding, nose was a gusher. In the second round of that fight, I thought Pacquiao, continuing his momentum, won the second round. So now you have to think to yourself, if you score that first round with 3 knockdowns, on a boxing 10-point must system, that should be a 10-6 round. Really, which means that Marquez is 4 rounds. He's really 4 rounds in the hole. So again, when there's 1 knockdown, it becomes a 10-8 round. If it's 2 knockdowns, it's a 10-7 round. If it's 3 knockdowns, it becomes a 10-6 round using the 10-point must rules scoring of boxing. So that's a 10-6 round. Then Marquez loses the second round, so now he is 5 points, 5 rounds in the hole. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought Marquez won that fight because really from the 3rd round on, Marquez made the adjustments. He was outboxing Pacquiao. He had more gifts than Pacquiao had. Clearly more, I would say, a better overall boxing repertoire or more gifts in his arsenal versus Pacquiao with his quick, straight, hard left hand, while Marquez had a good jab, a good right hand, a good left hook, a good body punch. He utilized better footwork by circling out and sidestepping to the left to create angles. So Marquez was the better boxer on paper. Pacquiao was a more explosive fighter, the more explosive puncher, the more powerful puncher. So that accounted for those 3 knockdowns. But I thought even that fight was scored a draw, and I didn't have a decision, and I didn't have an issue with the decision, but I thought that Marquez did enough to win that fight because I felt he pretty much swept the rest of that fight after the second round. If you can give Pacquiao another round during the rest of that fight, would be maybe a 10th or an 11th round. But I thought Marquez clearly dug his way out of the hole and won the fight by simply outboxing Pacquiao, by starting to neutralize his left hand. Again, at that time, Pacquiao was not as a refined fighter as he later on came to be, but he was still that explosive, really getting by on raw talent, power, and speed. And again, Pacquiao at that time was lightning fast, so you didn't see the punches coming, even though you knew what was coming, but you couldn't see the punches coming. So I thought that Marquez won that fight. James, my boy, if you're listening, I know we discussed that back in the day, but I think Pacquiao won that fight. I'm sorry, I think Marquez won that fight. But it was a great fight, and that's when I became a huge fan of Juan Marquez. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever wonder why a corner is very important to a fighter, who your trainer is, Marquez's trainer was a guy by the name of Nacho Bernstein. And you would think that what do you tell a fighter who's been dropped 3 times by a physically superior fighter, nose is gushing blood, clearly is broken, lips fattened, and you saw that gusher being reduced to a trickle. And Nacho Bernstein is one of the greatest trainers of all time. I mean, you figure Nacho Bernstein, Emanuel Stewart, Bowie Fischer, Eddie Futch, the late Eddie Futch, the late Manny Stewart, the late Bowie Fischer. These were guys who what's my guy's name? The guy who once trained Lou Duva. There you go. These guys were all-time great trainers. So Nacho Bernstein, to work that corner, to prop his fighter up from a near catastrophe, being knocked down 3 times, to coach him up, to get him up back on his feet, to have him to win enough rounds to win that fight, it speaks up about corners. So young fighters out there, if you listen to this broadcast, that's why it's good to invest in a good corner man to be with you. Just throwing it out there. So great fight by Marquez, and that's the night I became a fan of Marquez, by watching him pick himself up off the canvas, and I thought won enough rounds to beat Manny Pacquiao after being dropped in the first round so heavily. In September of 2004, scored a unanimous decision over Orlando Salido. If that name sounds familiar to you, he is the one man who holds a victory over pound for pound, well, one of the top pound for pound fighters in the world, Vasyl Lomachenko. Now, in March of 2006, he suffered in Indonesia a shocking upset loss to one Chris John. So again, you do everything to get yourself up to that level to fight a Pacquiao. You claim you've been ducked. Fights a hellacious fight versus Pacquiao, beats a formidable Orlando Salido, and loses to a Chris John by unanimous decision in Indonesia, losing a title. So not a good look, and rebounds back again with another major decision over one Marco Antonio Barrera in March of 2007. Now, again, a little bit of an older Barrera, not that same younger Barrera, but I thought it was a great fight. Again, now this time, I don't think Marquez won that fight. I thought Barrera did enough to pull that fight out. But again, not taking anything away from Marquez. There was a little bit of controversy in the seventh round. I was in the seventh round of that fight, where Marquez clearly had his best round, came out, cracked Barrera with the right hand, cleared to have stunned Barrera, or at least got his attention, was landing his right hand, was mixing up in there with some uppercuts. When at one point, when Barrera was trapped against the ropes, he started to mix up the attack by throwing body punches. And maybe with about 10 seconds left, he got careless and walked right into a right hand right on the chin. He went down, both of his gloves were on the canvas. Now, I don't know if Barrera didn't realize he was down or didn't think he was down, but he hits him while he's on the canvas. Now, referee Jay Nady did not score that punch that clearly, if your gloves touch the canvas, he did not score that a knockdown, and in fact, deducted a point from Barrera. So people felt with that alter the scorecards. But if you go back and listen to the scorecards at the end, the judges really gave that fight by a wide margin to Barrera. I'm talking about scores of 118, 109. Basically, you only gave the man one round. 116, 111. That's 8 rounds to 4. So I don't know what those judges were watching for them to score the fight for one Marquez by such a wide margin. Again, I don't think he won that fight, but not taking anything away from his greatness. But he does have that victory over the great Barrera on his resume. In November of 2007, he defeated by unanimous decision a solid fighter named Rocky Juarez. In March of 2018, he gets his rematch against one Manny Pacquiao, where he loses by split decision. In the third round, when it came to those Pacquiao fights, he really had no room for error, because at that time, Pacquiao was the big star. This is really after Floyd Mayweather has retired from boxing. The sports and the media was sort of galvanizing behind Pacquiao to lift him as the number one fighter in the world. And Marquez, a natural counterpuncher, really his style gave Pacquiao problems, as Pacquiao was a naturally more aggressive fighter and Marquez was a counterpuncher. But in the eyes of the judges, they like effective aggression versus counterpunching. I thought that Marquez counterpunched beautifully. And unfortunately, in the third round, he did score yet another knockdown in the third round. But what's funny is, again, he picked himself up off the canvas to win a lot of rounds. Again, by neutralizing Pacquiao's left hand, by boxing from a distance. Again, he has more of a repertoire than Pacquiao does. Now, at this time, Pacquiao has started to develop a little bit of a right hook, a good solid jab, but Marquez as a whole had more offensive weapons. But again, a split decision loss against Manny Pacquiao. In September of 2018, a KO victory over excellent Cuban fighter Joel Casamayor. Folks, look up Joel Casamayor and you'll see what I'm talking about. In February of 2009, a TKO over young fighter Juan Diaz. Juan Diaz was a young up-and-coming contender. Ran into Marquez, and that was the end of that. In September of 2009, lost to the returning Floyd Mayweather Jr. Now, I think Floyd Mayweather took this fight because he wanted to send a message to Pacquiao, because again, when Floyd Mayweather was retired for a year and a half, almost 2 years after his Ricky Hatton fight, that really saw the rise of Manny Pacquiao. And I felt that kind of got under Floyd's skin. See the interview on YouTube on One Sports Center with Brian Kenny to see what I'm talking about. And there was a lot of resentment on Floyd's part that people were propping Pacquiao up, considering what Floyd had done in the sport. And Floyd's argument was Pacquiao had lost before while I'm undefeated. So you got to figure from that 2008, 2009 is when the public really started clamoring for that Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather fight. So again, I don't know Floyd, but knowing how he is in the media, I think he took the Marquez fight to prove a point that he can beat this guy easily, where this guy has given Pacquiao 2 of his toughest fights. So easy decision by Floyd. I mean, really Marquez wasn't even competitive. Scored a second round knockdown against Marquez. But if you go back and watch the 24/7, what's notable about that is Marquez drinking his own urine. The fact that it showed on TV, but then again it was HBO, how Marquez would drink a cup of his own urine by stating that when he used the bathroom, of course, when you urinate, that's waste out of the body, but he felt that when you urinate, you're losing vital minerals and nutrients, and he believes in putting it back in his body. To each his own. I wouldn't do that, but to each his own. So that's what's notable about that fight. In July of 2010, he defeated again Juan Diaz. In November of 2010, he defeated Greek fighter Michael Katsidis in the 9th round by TKO. Now, Michael Katsidis was another young, hungry, up-and-coming fighter, had his future ahead of him. Once Michael Katsidis lost a great fight to Juan Casamayor, and really, things kind of fell off for Katsidis, but he was one of those young, up-and-coming fighters like a Juan Diaz, and Marquez rolled him in 9 rounds. In November of 2011, he fights Manny Pacquiao for the 3rd time. This time loses by a majority decision. Same sequence here. The natural counter-punching style of one Marquez versus the aggressive style against a Manny Pacquiao. And what's funny about that is he was hitting Pacquiao, and I'm going to go back to the first 2 fights. He was hitting Manny Pacquiao with some hard shots. I mean, I'm talking about you see Pacquiao's head snapping back. But again, the punches didn't have the power that Manny Pacquiao's punches did. I mean, because Marquez, again, great boxer, mixing up the attack, a better fighter than Pacquiao, has more gifts than Pacquiao does. But again, Pacquiao has the speed, the power, and the explosiveness. And I think those showier punches where a Pacquiao punch lands, it's a thud, and it's a pop. When a Marquez punch lands, yeah, it has an effect, but it never seemed to back Pacquiao off. Because if you hit a guy with your best punch, it makes him think differently. But in the 3 fights, whenever Marquez would hit Pacquiao with his best punch, Pacquiao would still keep coming forward. You would see Pacquiao would bang his gloves and would raise arms in the air, and Pacquiao would actually welcome the combat. So you clearly saw that Pacquiao had a potential to hurt a Marquez with his punch, but a Marquez cannot hurt a Pacquiao with his punch. So, which leads us going into the 4th fight, December of 2012. Now, again, this is when the Floyd Mayweather, the talk of a Mayweather fight was starting to get hot and heavy. I myself didn't think it was going to happen. You saw in the 24/7s that Pacquiao started to lift more weights. He was definitely, which is really kind of uncommon for boxers. Boxers really don't believe in lifting weights. But I think Marquez knew that I'm hitting this guy with my best Sunday punch and he keeps coming at me, or I'm fighting this guy and I'm landing more punches than him or an equal amount of punches as him, but the judges are not giving me these fights because I need to either knock this guy out, or when I hit him, I need to hurt him. So Marquez really started to begin a true weightlifting regimen. You see him doing a lot of shoulder lifts. By the time he got into that ring against Manny Pacquiao, the 4th fight, shoulders were filled out, round, thick, full shoulders. Some people want to throw it out there that maybe he might have done performance enhancement drugs to build muscle mass. We'll never know. But in that fight of December of 2012, drops Pacquiao in the 3rd round. Now again, he had been hitting Pacquiao with some absolutely monster punches, and really couldn't make a dent in Pacquiao's armor. This time, 3rd round, he makes a dent, drops Pacquiao. Now, really going into that 5th and the 6th round, I thought Pacquiao was starting to find his footing. I felt Pacquiao was starting to hit him. Now, when you fight a guy a whole bunch of times, when you study tape, you get to know some of his natural tendencies. Marquez knew that Pacquiao loves to charge forward. He knows that when Pacquiao throws his left hand, for the most part, he kind of winds it up. He kind of telegraphs it. But the thing is, Pacquiao was so lightning fast, he would hit you with that punch. So what Marquez figured out is, if he comes charging at me, if I can land something and simply sidestep to the left like he's always done, maybe he might have a shot here. And that's exactly what Marquez did at the end of the 6th round. Pacquiao came charging at him, and with about a second or so left, he uncorks a right hand. And go back and listen to the commentary by Roy Jones Jr. Folks, if you really wonder why I miss HBO boxing so damn much, and not only because of the action, because of the quality of the commentators. Roy Jones was saying in that fight that the weightlifting and the building his shoulders up was going to help Marquez with overhand punches, and that's exactly what he landed when Pacquiao came charging in. He was telegraphing his punch. Now, mind you, he was getting hit a lot in that 6th round, where you can make an argument that Pacquiao was actually winning that round. And he came charging in. Pacquiao wasn't minding his work, and he just uncorked a right hand, and Manny Pacquiao fell right on his face. And that is the worst defeat of Pacquiao's career. I would say one of the most vicious knockouts I've ever seen, ever in boxing. And this is going back to Paul Williams and Sergio Martinez. I mean, my goodness, George Foreman, Michael Moore, Derek Jefferson, Maurice Harris. I mean, great knockouts. And he caught Pacquiao. You see Pacquiao's head snap back in slow motion, and Pacquiao was face down on the canvas. The referee didn't even, I think the referee counted maybe it's like 4, stopped counting. Marquez jumps on the ropes, you saw celebrating. I'm going to tell you how bad the knockout was. Pacquiao was still on the canvas for a little while, like about a good 30 seconds where he did not move, and there was legitimate concern for the health of Manny Pacquiao. So that was Marquez's biggest victory, a TKO victory in the 6th round. I'm sorry, a KO victory in the 6th round versus Manny Pacquiao. Next fight, October 2013, lost a split decision to Timothy Bradley, who Timothy Bradley won a questionable decision. That was a questionable, an awful decision against one Manny Pacquiao. In his final fight in May of 2014, defeated Mike Alvarado, another action fighter. Look at Alvarado's fights with one Brandon Rios, and Alvarado lost to Marquez by unanimous decision in the 12th round. So, folks, the reason why Marquez is one of my favorites of all time is because he definitely fought all comers for what it's worth. The only fights that you didn't get to see him in, and really through no fault of his own, are the Prince Nassim Hamed, who clearly ducked him, and for some reason he never got into the ring with Erik Morales. So that's that one fight, golden era, featherweight age fight that we never got to see, was him versus one Erik Morales. And I think that would have been another great fight, along with the fights against Pacquiao, along with the fights against against Pacquiao. Now, I love watching this guy fight. Great boxer. Again, excellent footwork, good jab, good straight right hand. Could throw to the body on the inside as well as the outside. In the Barrera fight, he threw an excellent uppercut that was actually working for him. You can thank Bernstein for that. And definitely had a thing where if he got hit, he would want to hit you back, much like a Barrera. And again, I'm going to go back to those Pacquiao fights, specifically the first and the second fight, when he was hit and he was hurt and he was battered and bruised. This man picked himself up off the canvas to win rounds and in some cases even dominate Pacquiao. And again, this is during the rise of Pacquiao, when he was seen as the best fighter on the planet, next to one Floyd Mayweather. And I think that with Marquez being his toughest opponent, that's why he gets all my respect and all my credit in the world. And I always enjoy watching Marquez fight. Now, you can ask me, JD, well, why is he not in the top 10? To me, with all the fights against Pacquiao, he won one decisive fight, and that's obviously the knockdown. Other fights, unanimous decision loss, majority decision losses, split decisions and draws. There was always, it took him 4 times to decisively beat Pacquiao. That kind of, because you're not dominating the other top guy of your era. Some of the guys he fought, the Juan Diaz's, the Michael Cassidy's, were young up-and-coming fighters, but nothing really spectacular. The Barrera fight, even though he won by large margins on the referee scorecards, I didn't see it that way, as well as losing to one Chris John. Whoever heard of that guy? So it's one of those, he has the losses that hurt him in comparison to the Barreras and the Pacquiaos. Not really too many big names on his career. He has the bad loss to Floyd Mayweather. Again, he did move up the 2 weight classes to fight Floyd. We know it was for the money, but again, he still has that loss. He was virtually shut out for every round. So that's the only reason why he's outside of my top 10 list, but still a great fighter nonetheless. I would encourage you all to go back and watch a lot of his Pacquiao fights. Go back and watch the first fight, second fight, third fight. Go back and watch the Barrera fight. This guy was an action fighter who brought it all the time, he was a proverbial, he took a good punch to give a good punch. And this guy clearly had a heart of a lion to get hit by Pacquiao, to get up off the canvas, to make the adjustments that a top professional could, and is able to outpoint and win enough rounds and really neutralize Pacquiao's game. So people think that Mayweather was Pacquiao's biggest rival. No, his biggest rival was Juan Manuel Marquez. And for that, champ, Dinamito, he's definitely on the Chin Check Radio's honorable mention list. We don't know who our next fighter is going to be, so we're going to be working. We're still comprising our list, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. I tell people this all the time. We're still comprising our list. When I think I have another fighter on there who we're going to do a preview on, for some reason I end up taking his name off because I put somebody else. So the list is still being worked on. It's a fun list. So once again, with everything that we have going on, if this was your escape for just a little while to hear me babble on about fighters of yesteryear, and again, we like to keep their legacies alive, because how many Saturday nights have these guys provided great memories for me and all my friends. We had great boxing discussions, so no matter what you're doing, despite what we all have going on, the fact that you took the time out to even listen to us at Chin Check Radio, we are so thankful and grateful. And until the next time.